Due to the countless amounts of strange websites on the internet, it's intriguing to see when one seems to stand out from the rest. In the earlier days of the web, stumbling across a creepy website was something much more novel as opposed to today. There was no precedent to a good online mystery. Internet users revel in the idea of exploring such oddities. Just for the sake of online mystery, internet users there was no precedent necessarily exploring such oddities. Just for the sake of online mystery, internet users there was no precedent necessarily exploring such oddities. Just for the sake of online mystery, internet users there was no precedent. In fact, there is so much speculation regarding this individual website that all the details surrounding this makes getting to the bottom of it incredibly difficult. So today, let's try and make sense of all the rumors of mortis.com. Let's start off this video with a Reddit post, as it will give us a brief summary of the topic before we actually start to dissect this mystery. I want to point out as well that this person is by no means the first person to post about this, but this post does have a good collection of info that provides a very good starting point. So a while back, I stumbled across this internet mystery while researching LakeCityQuietPills.com and came across an equally intriguing internet mystery related to a mysterious website called mortis.com. Apparently this website, when it was active, it was created in 1997 and has since been shut down. This page came up with a login and password screen that, according to some experts, was extremely hard to hack into, with some resorting to brute force applications and having little to no luck in getting past the login screen. It got a lot weirder when more people started to look into it because more and more connections and links were starting to be made with this website. Some of the strange aspects were: the website seemed to be linked to a dentist office, a lawyer, and a high-end security firm. Usenet files were discovered to be linked back to the website that were apparently encrypted with password protection and had weird titles. Some of the file sizes were huge, one of the biggest being 39 gigabytes in size, which got people wondering just what this website was hiding. All references to this site have since been removed from the internet, including a wiki page, and there's not much information regarding the website itself. The website was apparently owned by a mysterious individual named Thomas Ling, although it was speculated that this was an alias, as there seemed to be great difficulty in trying to gather and ascertain any information about him other than he was an artist at one point. Over a dozen other websites were linked to mortis.com, and they were just as mysterious and weird, one of which had a white chess piece and nothing else. It was also reported at one time that Thomas Ling apparently came out and said that the site was just for his wedding photos and nothing more. However, all this did was prompt more people to work even harder to get through the login page and discover for themselves what was really going on. People also found other very bizarre connections, such as the site being linked to empty vacant lots and warehouses, and people who were listed as something to do with the website were all deceased. This fueled speculation that this site was a front for something, or much more sinister. Website was also, from various accounts from people who tried to hack in, very difficult to get past the login screen, and that the website was very well protected. If there was anyone around during this time who actively was involved in this little internet mystery and can shed some light and give more details, as there's still so much to the site I'd love to know about that got lost when the wiki got taken down. I'd love your help and input, as I'd love to clear up this mystery. Thanks, guys. Within this post, our OP leaves quite a few links to different archived threads from 4chan. Quite a few of them are taken down. Keep in mind, this post isn't that old either, so these archived threads have disappeared recently. However, our OP does leave quite a few updates as people start to comment. The first update is just him saying that he's going to update the post. The second update to this post, our OP links another thread from 4chan on the technology board, which we'll reference in a bit as it is one of the only few ones remaining. The third update to this thread reads the following. Another persistent story, which is hard to back up, stated that the feds apparently became involved with the site for some unknown reason and shut it down. However, another Reddit user who claimed to be there claimed it was actually Thomas Ling who shut it down himself for unknown reasons. Which story is true is hard to say. It also opens up more questions and provides few answers. If the feds part of the story is true, why did they shut down the site and become involved? If it was Thomas Ling who came along and shut down the site himself, I can only assume it was because of all the attention he was getting, and he decided to shut it down before anyone got close to discovering what he was up to. Update 4 states, there were other websites that were backtracked as belonging to Thomas Ling that were just as weird and equally mysterious as mortis.com, which included Cthulhu.net. This one was said to contain nothing but a white chess piece with a very eerie saying, dead but dreaming, whatever that means. Then there was KarenLing.com, JoshuaLing.org, Lingsboro.com, EternalNight.com, and DentalFillins.ne. A side note here, there are a lot more websites that people have overlooked in this thread, as well as many other threads like this. I did my own research on this, and we'll get to that once we're done with this. Back on the Reddit post, it reads, To my knowledge, no one really found out what the purposes were for these websites either, and some of them are believed to be defunct now too. Here our OP adds more updates, including first-hand testimonies from people claiming to be around 4chan at the time. One of the testimonies reads the following: though it's no longer up, the strangest website I've encountered is definitely mortis.com. I used to browse the X board, or the paranormal board on 4chan, pretty regularly. One night, someone posted asking if there was any updates on the website called Mortis. I decided to visit the site and see what the hubbub was. What I found was seemingly uninteresting. Completely black background with the word mortis in lowercase, white lettering, absolutely nothing else. Weird, but not worth investigating, I thought. I tried clicking on the word, and a login box came up. When I checked back to the X board, people were talking about trying to log in. No one was getting anywhere. A few people did enough research to learn that there were many terabytes of information being stored here. Yeah, you read that right. Terabytes. Hundreds, if I remember correctly. It was something absolutely ridiculous. We all had our theories, most of them disturbing. A lot of people suggested we give up trying to get in for our own safety, depending on what was in there. But most people disagreed and kept trying. Eventually, people were tired of trying generic username and password combos. Someone decided to ask the G, or technology board, to hack their way in instead of trying to brute force. People tried for weeks to get in. We learned that the website belonged to one Mr. Ling, who owned multiple other anomalous websites, which were also interesting but irrelevant. We learned more and more about Ling, but never got past the login box. I gave up, but others kept trying. A few months ago, I decided to look around and see what progress had been made. Apparently the FBI stepped in. I think they actually contacted some of the people trying to get in and crack the login, but I wasn't around at the time this happened. Soon after, the website and all others owned by Mr. Ling just went down. I would still like to know what's in there, but it was fun getting involved with some of the biggest conspiracy theorists in the interwebs on something so fun. I'm going to skip through this thread to the next first-hand account because we already know a lot of this information. The next first-hand account comes from a username mental_illness. I was in all the IRCs and stuff when all this happened. The FBI had no involvement, sadly. The dude who owned the site came into our IRC chat and told us it was just family photos or something. When we asked him for proof that we were talking to the real guy, he changed the front page of the website to some text explaining himself, then quickly took it down. It was all very, very fishy. He had another site which showed an image of a knight chess piece and offered a login when you clicked on it. Nobody got into that one either. I don't remember the URL. Okay, there's a ton of information here, but this gives you a general understanding of this mystery as a whole and how many rumors regarding this website have been created. The hard part here is confirming all the rumors circulated throughout this post. There's a lot of conflicting information. If we want to create a logical understanding of what's going on with this website, we need to be able to verify things ourselves. As I said previously, many of the links to 4chan threads, as well as any other archived threads, have since been lost or dead. If there is one thing we can say for certain just from all these rumors, is that the creator of the website obviously knows what it's used for, and we know who that is. It's Thomas Ling. So, let's start there. A great way to learn more about Thomas Ling is to look up what websites he created. For reference, what I'm about to look at is public records. They're required when you register a website under your name. If we do a reverse DNS lookup for the name Thomas Ling, we find 25 domains created under this first and last name. The first one ever created was mortis.com, as well as the following websites. I will say, it does seem like Thomas Ling has gone out of his way to remove this website from existence. This truly shows whatever is on this website is definitely trying to be hid and left in the past. We know this because someone contacted the Wayback Machine to remove sites from their archive. I just want to point out that I've looked through the Wayback Machine quite a bit, and I've only seen this a handful of times. So, since we can't even view what the original website looked like, reverse domain search, Anyone with the name Thomas Ling would fall under this search, and we need to narrow it down even further. If you still don't understand what I mean by this, for example, if your name was something really common like John Smith, then you would be lumped into this list with a bunch of other John Smiths that had registered websites on the public record. The list of websites I believe to be helpful in this situation are the ones that all seem to be under the same domain registrar, which goes by the name Pair Networks Incorporated. If you're unfamiliar with what a domain registrar is, it is essentially a company that is involved in reserving the name of a website for you. Most of these websites under this registrar are created around the same time as Mortis.com. Here are a list of those websites. Keep in mind I had to go through these one by one and find valuable information all pertaining to this. These websites are Cthulhu.net, dentalfillins.com, eternalnight.com, exercio.com, jeffreyling.org, joshualing.org, karenling.com, lingsboro.com, mortis.com, and thomaslingdds.com. Since we already know about mortis.com, that it was just a page with a login, and that we can't really check out the past history of the website, let's look at the next one in the timeline. That was created an entire year later, in 1998. This website is exercio.com, which I forgot to mention is also redacted from the Wayback Machine. Here's the thing, though. This website is actually still up, regardless of not being on the Wayback Machine. Going to this website, we find a directory with a few labeled items: quilts.html, quilts_files, robots.txt, and a folder called sale. The only one that I found helpful in this case was the quilts.html link. If we click on quilts.html, we get redirected to a page that shows a wide variety of quilts on a website that looks to be an art portfolio for someone who makes quilts as a hobby and wants to share them with the world. In 1998, this would have been a lot more common to have something like this for an art portfolio because you didn't have places to share your little DIY projects like you do now. I believe this website belongs to Karen Ling, and I'll explain why. On the titled post of the homepage, we can't click anything. But we can see is that this woman has made a quilt for two people on their first birthday, Joshua and Jeffrey, which if we go back to the list of our domains that I said would be helpful, what do we see? joshualing.org and jeffreyling.org, as well as karenling.com. What I want you to take note of on this website is the logo in the top right, DFI, which I can't click on here, but I will explain in a minute. The next website I want to take a look at is dentalfillins.com, which is archived on the Wayback Machine. On the first capture of the website, it is noted to have two offices that belong to Dental Fillins as a business. These locations have long since vacated from this business, and they aren't related to this business at all anymore. And that really doesn't help us at all. Moving on, if we navigate over to the FAQ section, we can pretty much learn everything we need to know about this site. Here, once again, we see the DFI logo that belongs to Dental Fillins, which was also on the other website. I will say that this business did in fact exist, despite what a lot of people online mention about this being a fake business. There is documentation of Dental Fillins Incorporated being opened and closed as an employment service. These incorporated filings in the state of California have Thomas Ling's name written right on them. I will also note this business entity was suspended by the Franchise Tax Board in the state of California, and this is in fact public record that is viewable to anybody who looks up this individual business entity. However, due to the nature of other names being involved in this document, I don't want to show it here as there's no reason to. It seemed like all this business did was find fill-in positions for dental assistants, and with the rise of new job search websites, this kind of became obsolete, I would guess. This business was suspended in 2012. However, what I want to note is that it was actually founded in 1998. Something that may have led to the rumor that this wasn't a real business was because the website actually lies about the age of creation. It says that it was actually in 1968 when the business was founded. However, we know it to be 1998. Moving on, before we get to the weird websites, there is still one normal one that remains on our list. That is thomaslingdds.com, which is still up and belongs to a dentist in San Francisco. Funny enough, this website was registered closely to the time of the Dental Fill-In Company closing. Looking at all of his Yelp reviews, we can see that this guy is a pretty nice guy, so please do not harass this guy asking him about Mortis. This mystery has been around for a while, and if he wanted to come forward and talk about it by now, he would have. So please just let this guy do his job. All right, now let's move on to the more cryptic websites on our list. Cthulhu.net, another website that is believed to be owned by Ling. Not much is known about this website, but that's probably because there was nothing to it. In the earliest captures of the Wayback Machine, the site actually said, Cthulhu.net will awaken soon. Send us your email address and we'll keep you posted. Cthulhu@Cthulhu.net. As far as a chess piece being on the site, like our OP mentioned, I think they obviously misremembered this. There's absolutely nothing to click on this website, or at least the Wayback Machine doesn't allow for it. As far as the chess piece rumor, do you remember joshualing.org? Well, if you go to the oldest capture from the Wayback Machine in July of 2011, here is a black chess piece. This is what is shown on many of the other websites of Lings, including lingsborough.com. My best guess here is that since there was nothing to these sites, the names that were used on these sites were basically as a way to reserve a domain for their kids. The website KarenLing.com even had the phrase future home of KarenLing.com in its earliest capture, and then thereafter became a black chess piece indefinitely. He's likely using this black chess piece just as a placeholder for the websites that he doesn't use. For Cthulhu.net, he does the same thing, but with a phrase, which is different. As to why Ling picked up the name Cthulhu.net, my best guess would be that this was an attempt at domain flipping. This is essentially when you buy a domain, sit on it for a while, and try to sell it for more money. In the early days of the internet, something like Cthulhu would have been highly sought after if you could get a .net, a .com, or any type of website with that domain name. Interestingly enough, if you look at the Google Trends of January of 2004, the interest in domain flipping was the highest actually ever recorded. Funny enough, this domain was registered in March of 2004, just 2 months later. As far as any connections to any other businesses, I believe that may have stemmed from people looking into other websites by people named Thomas Ling. I found no connection to a security firm. Seeing that our lives can be quite micromanaged with our phones in this day and age, it's no wonder people have gone to taking their dating into the online arena. The truth is, meeting quality people compatible for yourself can take quite a bit of time. And it's no wonder things like Tinder, among other dating apps, have become essentials in people's phones. And while not everyone has adopted this new practice, still today we see thousands of people swiping and meeting on a daily basis. The inconvenient truth of meeting anybody from a dating application or website is that you never really know exactly who they are until you've met them and spent time with them. While someone might seem funny or easygoing, it's guilty until proven innocent when it comes to meeting someone in this situation. Nobody is perfect, but certainly there are people out there that are just more twisted than others. That being said, what we're going to be discussing today is one such instance that is the epitome of what you're not looking for. But before I dive into this rabbit hole that Reddit has once again led me down, I just want to say one thing. I'm not typically a fan of subreddits like r/let's not meet. I enjoy a good creepy story, but I prefer things grounded in reality as it shows for an analysis of the situation. And since the subreddit uses the honor system, in many cases it is almost impossible to tell what's real and what's fiction. But the thing with this story, and the reason I sought to make a video on it today, is that the case tied to it is 100% real. So, without further ado, kick back, grab some popcorn as we dive right into this mini rabbit hole. Here is what the post from user LNM Throwaway9 said. I've reached out to the mods with evidence to verify the story. I just have to send them the link after posting. So it will take a bit to get verified. I'm noting this because I know this story seems completely ridiculous, but the girl I experienced this with is actually insane. Also using a throwaway because I don't want people to figure out who I am. A lot of people may have heard about this girl. She was all over the news after she stalked a guy, bombarded him with 65,000 texts, and broke into his house all over one date. We met shortly after she went on that date with him, and we were friends for a while before she broke into his house. At first, she seemed like a nice, albeit quirky, person. I met her when I spent a couple of months visiting the West Coast from the US in summer 2017. I thought she was cute, and we spent a lot of time together. We were living next door to each other for a few weeks, and we were never really more than friends. I stopped having any sort of non-platonic feelings after she started to talk a lot about a guy she had met on some dating website. Apparently, he was her soulmate, and she had somehow been guided to him by following her birth calendar. I would only later come to know that they had only been on one date, and he had never spoken to her again. I thought that was weird, but I enjoyed our conversations for the most part, and she was funny and nice, so we remained friends. Eventually, she moved on to short flings with a guy and then another girl from Tinder, all while still talking to me about this guy that she was going to marry, saying that she liked how jealous he got when she would tell him about hooking up with other people. A couple of weeks later, she started to get really erratic. I confronted her a few times on how she was acting, and she told me that she had recently stopped taking her meds, but would start taking them again. She came home one day and decided to tell me that she had a court date coming up for DUI. Her plan was instead to leave the country and go to South America. I told her what a dumb idea that was, and even though she actually went all the way to the airport in a different city, she wound up coming back. Apparently, her soulmate was no longer answering her texts, and she took that as a sign that she should drag her ass back to where he was and fix their relationship. She was upset that he might be seeing other people, even though it seemed okay to her that she was seeing other people. Later on, she told me she had texted him and said if he blocked her, she would know that meant that he wanted her to come find him. Obviously, he blocked her. Obviously, it didn't go over well. So she moved a couple of days later, and the summer was ending, and I moved back to the East Coast. I didn't hear from her for a little while, but then when we started talking again through text and WhatsApp, she seemed like she was doing better. She told me she had found a roommate and was working on her art again, and just generally seemed like she was in a better place. I was happy to have my friend back and healthy, but that didn't last longer than a couple of months. Eventually, her behavior started to seem erratic again. She was sending dozens of texts at a time, and they were all over the place. Several of them had to do with her soulmate and how she was still following him, even though he had called the police and blocked her. I told her to stop, tried to get her to take her meds, and tried to reason with her 100 times. I was on the opposite side of the country and had no way of getting in touch with her family, who I never knew much about, or friends to try and get them to help her. She was a kind person and a good friend when she was taking care of her mental health, and I cared about her, but I couldn't force her to take care of herself. One day, I set aside some time to call her, and I told her she was overwhelming me and that she really needed to reach out to her family or someone who could help her. She told me I couldn't do that because she needed to stay with me or she would have to go back to her ex-husband. I don't think any of this is true, but she thought her ex-husband was going to have her killed or followed, that he had the entire police force in his pocket and had paid off her family to give him intel on her whereabouts and what is going on in her life. I had just moved for a job, and I lived in a small studio in a big city. I had no room for anyone to stay long term, and I wasn't about to do that anyway since she was starting to scare me at this point. She asked me if I was still living at my address, which really freaked me out because I'd never given her my address or put it anywhere online, and she wouldn't tell me how she got it. I asked her to leave me alone and told her we couldn't be friends anymore unless she took some steps to get better. She obviously did not take this well. Though I hated my tiny, cramped apartment, the reason I was drawn to it was because it had great security. It was actually on the upper floors of a hotel, although the hotel rooms were much nicer than the residence, and no one was allowed through the residence elevators unless the resident had given their name to security ahead of time and the guest had to show ID. After what happened next, I loved my cramped little apartment because the staff there kept me safe. It had been over a week since I talked to her, and because I blocked her number and blocked her on WhatsApp, she tried texting me from 4 different phone numbers, including text-free, etc., but I just blocked them all and never responded. I was walking home from work one day, and I was sure I saw her across the street from my building, but it was storming out, and I didn't get a good view. I rushed upstairs and calmed myself down in my apartment. Maybe I was just being paranoid. It's a big city, and lots of people have brown hair and glasses. I'm just worried about her. But then the phone rang. The desk was calling to see if I had forgotten to let them know I had a visitor. My heart sank. I asked them who was waiting. They said they tried asking for a name or ID, but she just walked out. And I knew it was her from the way they described her. I texted a mutual friend from over the summer. I wasn't really close with him, so we hadn't stayed in touch, but he told me she had lost it and that he had blocked her too. Apparently, she had gone back on the dating site where she met her soulmate and found someone who looked just like him in my city. She was convinced it was him and had come to find him. This was a very touristy city, but there's just no way this guy had just coincidentally come out here. I was sure she had gone bonkers, and I knew she was well aware of where that guy actually lived. I took a page out of her book and used a text-free number to text her that she should leave me alone and I would call the cops if she ever came near me or my building again. In retrospect, I shouldn't have contacted her at all, but I was emotional and not using my better judgment. She said she just wanted to know if I could help her find something and texted back really fucking fast. I didn't even try to hide it. Then I deleted the text-free app so she couldn't reach me again. I lived in a very crowded area, and I knew she couldn't get into my building, but I was still scared whenever I had to go take public transit alone at night or was walking through less crowded areas to get home. I had a friend who used to work for the police, but not in this city or at the time this all happened, and she would drive or walk me home from work whenever she could for a while. She told me I could go ahead and report it, even though they couldn't really do anything since she hadn't hurt me and nothing really happened. But I was embarrassed, and again, I didn't use my better judgment. I felt like it was my fault for engaging with her for so long. I knew she was mentally unstable, and I would still try to befriend her and help her. Maybe I gave her the wrong idea, that I could do more for her. I ended up moving to a new city for another job. After that, I didn't hear from her again. I later found out the reason why was that a couple months later, she had once again gone back to Arizona and been arrested for breaking into her, quote, soulmate's house and using his bathtub, and found a large knife in her car. So the story pretty much ends there with a couple edits, but let's dive deeper into what we just read. The first thing to note is that it's fairly obvious that our OP was a previous romantic partner to this woman prior to her going insane. However, just to note, it sounds more like a casual relationship, as our OP stated. I thought she was cute, and we spent a lot of time together. We were living next door to each other for a few weeks, and we were never really more than friends. Our OP claims to have spent a lot of time with her and that she had lost all feelings for her when she brought up her soulmate. And if that wasn't enough, our OP also was close enough to know that she was taking some kind of medication. Getting to see this point of view is incredibly interesting, as the woman gradually decayed in her mental state over the months, all seeming to stem over one date with one guy from a dating website. Another thing to note is that our OP still stayed in contact and even confronted her on her behavior. Our OP was watching someone they knew closely go insane to the point that nobody felt safe around her. The last thing that our OP claims in the title of the post is that a friend had claimed to send this soulmate 65,000 text messages. Well, what if I told you she sent just a little bit more than that? I'll show you how I know it was more, but it was actually 159,000 text messages. Just for some perspective here, that's 523 texts she was sending to this guy every single day for 10 months. So let's dive into the details beyond the story on Reddit, because we've really only scratched the surface here. Quick Google search of 65,000 text messages leads us deeper into this story. This is a case that is very much documented and public. This woman's name is Jacqueline Adis, and this person she became obsessed with really did only go on one date with her. As it turns out, Jacqueline met a wealthy CEO living in Arizona on an app called Luxy, which is an app dedicated to upscale dating. Just for reference here, some packages for this app's membership cost are as much as $1,000 every 3 months. So this app is clearly looking to define a demographic, and it appears that Jacqueline was trying to meet a fairly affluent guy. After going on a date with this unnamed CEO, she became frustrated with the one-sided nature of the conversation, and after she left Arizona to visit California, thereafter, she began to spam the CEO's phone with messages until ultimately getting blocked. But this wasn't the end. After the CEO in Arizona blocked her, she continued to message him and found other means of contacting him. She found out where he lived and ultimately led up to consistent death threats in April of 2018, to which the man finally decided he wanted to press charges. It would take hours to look through these messages, so I'm just going to flash through quite a few on screen right now. Upon looking through these messages, the ones to note are the most disturbing. She stated she wanted to bathe in his blood and make sushi out of his kidneys, as well as many random mentions about money. While not all of these messages are out in the public record, it's still insane just looking at a small tidbit of how frequently this woman was messaging this man. As a result, this ultimately bubbled over and led to the woman being accused into breaking into the man's home and bathing in his bathtub while nobody was home. According to this case, upon checking surveillance footage, the CEO recognized the intruder, to which the police showed up and found a large butcher knife in the front seat of her Mercedes. And something I want to note is that this woman was clearly not trying to hide her insanity. Looking through her social media, the post months before portrays just how manic and delusional she had become. This post on March 23rd, 2018 read the following. You can pause the video to check any of these out. And another post on March 21st, 2018, a few days earlier, read the following.
I'll go home and I'll love my ex-boyfriend. What am I supposed to do?
Should he be afraid of you?
No.
Does any of this seem kind of weird at all to you?
No.
Because in a lot of people's eyes, they see this as weird.
That's because they're selfish. And they've never...
Reddit, among other platforms on the internet, are home to tons of first-hand accounts and stories, most of which are unverifiable. Having a degree of anonymity grants people a certain level of comfort that makes them much more likely to share things that they would otherwise keep to themselves. It certainly is true that people love to talk, and certain people love to talk for attention, but sometimes it's hard to determine the motive behind a certain post. As an onlooker, a healthy amount of skepticism can be useful when determining whether or not a Reddit thread is worth your time, but occasionally, one such circumstance can leave you questioning just how real a post is. Just to clarify, though, Reddit is absolutely no stranger to trolling and instances of elaborate fiction, but in this case today, this mystery doesn't seem to add up in the way of fiction. In today's video, we're going to take a look at one such Redditor who seems to have shared a bit too much information about their past. On January 21st, 2016, a post on Ask Reddit would gain quite a bit of attention. It was aptly titled, "To Those Who Have Accidentally Killed Someone, What Went Wrong?" This Reddit thread got over 6,800 upvotes and over 10,000 comments, and the most notable is from a now deleted Reddit user, whom, after posting this comment, almost immediately deleted their account. This post in question read the following. This still haunts me to this day. As kids, we had a hideout in this dirt cliff/cove. This is the best approximation I can find on Google. Only 3 times taller and probably about 10 times as wide. There was a neighborhood kid who, in hindsight, was probably mentally handicapped in some way. But to us, he was just the weird, creepy kid. This was the 80s, and we weren't exactly raised PC. 3 of us were headed to our base, and we found the creepy kid sitting at the top of our guard chair. We yelled at him to get out, and he said something like, "Make me," and started lobbing dirt clods and sticks down at us. We all ran around the side to make our way up. It gets pretty fuzzy here, but all I remember is he fell. I still remember the sound. When we got back down to check on him, he was in a very awkward position, with blood coming out of his mouth. We all just freaked out and ran home. And as far as I know, no one has ever spoke a word of this to anyone. We didn't go back for over a month and never said a word of it between us. Again, this was the 80s, so media wasn't like today. Chances are it got a small article in the elementary school
on that. So as far as I know,
descent. Police searched tunnels and caves in the area and the drenched nearby streams and creeks in an effort to locate the body. However, nothing was found. Something to note here is that a large storm occurred directly after this boy went missing, which would directly explain why an individual child's body was never found. People are still searching for this boy to this day. There hasn't ever been any closure in this case. In addition to that, there's been a Nancy Grace profile featuring the brother doing the interview. Let's take a look.
As far as I know, family and friends would have been my older sister, Stacy, before she had left for work and stuff. And she was there when he had come home and changed after school and that. So as far as I know, it was Stacy.
And what did Stacy see?
He was, the last time she had seen him, he was at the top of the hill just playing, running around, being a kid like we did. You know, I know people say not to play in the streets, but that's where we played, up at the top of the street. And that's where he was.
And this was a fairly urban but rural area, too. You were sort of out in the country, right, where kids just could feel free to play?
Yeah, it was a neighborhood. I mean, it was a neighborhood full of 100 kids probably in the neighborhood, but, you know, right 5 minutes from our house was nothing. Farmlands and fields and dirt trails and stuff like that.
How violent was that storm late afternoon? And did you think your brother had just hidden to have cover?
Yeah, it was a pretty bad storm. You know, it just came and went pretty quick. You know, I don't think he hid somewhere. We just assumed that he was inside someone's house, you know, playing inside with another friend. You know, and that's just kind of then started knocking on doors, on every door we could.
When did your parents finally call police?
It was later in the evening. I can't, you know, I'm not for sure on the time, 8, somewhere around there. It was, you know, before it had gotten dark.
And I understand they came right out.
Yeah, they were there right away, yes.
So what did they do that evening and the next day and the next few days and the next week?
That night, I'm not, you know, it's pretty vague for me because I was young. So that night, you know, I can't remember exactly what they did. But that next morning was full-fledged. They had a search party set up with dogs and helicopters and horsebacks and you name it, you know, anything.
Now let's try and take a look at a map and piece together this situation from a Reddit thread and create a new hypothesis. From another source in this case, we can see exactly where Scott was last spotted by a neighbor. Scott was last seen not far from his home in the 3300 block of Lebaron's Drive near a wooded area known as the Trails. It was just before a fierce thunderstorm swept through the area. As long as 6 weeks after his disappearance, police conducted large-scale searches of the area near Scott's home. The searches involved digging at a labyrinth of caves in the wooded hillside where Scott was known to play with the other neighborhood children. If we take a look at where this kid was last spotted, it doesn't make much sense as the area of the land has been developed since the 1980s. One user on another Reddit thread named Paramecia Antic posted the following. The location that is now Fox Hill Park in St. Charles had dirt trails and several steep gorges cutting through it in the 1990s. It's a little over a mile by foot from the last sighting of Scott Cleeschulte. Route I-370 wasn't built then, so it was accessible by foot. Today, it has been graded somewhat and has stormwater management areas, but you can still see the cliffs that remain. A deep ravine is seen directly in the direction as the child was walking, which seems to put forth a reliable location as to where this child could have fallen, which makes this entire story seem much more believable. The only thing I will say that seems to contradict this, though, is the fact that this boy's scent was followed for 5 miles where this location was only 1 mile away. Now, I want to also point out another lead regarding this case that dates all the way back to 2007. but it's weak to say the least. According to VT.co, the last fresh lead in this case was in 2007 when investigators began looking into Michael Devlin for a possible involvement in several missing children cases, including the 1991 disappearance of Charles Arlen Henderson and the 2005 disappearance of Bianca Piper, after Sean Hornbeck, a 15-year-old boy who disappeared in 2002, and William Ownby, a 13-year-old boy who was abducted in 2007, were discovered to have been held captive in Devlin's house. Devlin ultimately pled guilty to charges of kidnapping and child molestation and was sentenced to life in prison. Despite repeated interrogations by a special task force, no evidence was found implicating Devlin in the disappearance of Scott Cleashulte. I can't understand why Michael Devlin would be seen as a lead regarding Scott if he had already been sentenced to life in prison. If no evidence was found linking him together, why is this seen as a likely lead on the internet? It doesn't make sense in my opinion. In conclusion, I see the events surrounding this to be incredibly specific. All the details surrounding the initial post to the now deleted Reddit account all point to this specific case, almost down to every detail. The only thing that seems out of place are the location of the body, which was never turned up, and the scent going on for 5 miles. However, both of these things seem to be explained away pretty perfectly by the large torrential storm. Here is an excerpt from a website regarding training dogs to track scents after rain. It reads the following. People wonder if dogs can track in rain, and the answer is yes. Rain will wet the scent and refresh it, but a big storm with torrents of rain will ruin the scent trail, as will heavy winds. Also, if an extensive search was done, then something must have turned up. However, I will say that it wouldn't be the first time a search for a missing person has overlooked something. Now, with the years gone by, it's almost impossible to locate any remains, even if they are buried underneath the now developed area. If this account is true, and they're not just trolling with specific details to this case, then this is really disturbing. This family has been looking for their child and trying to gain some kind of closure for over 30 years. And to think that someone has this stored in the back of their memory is really unnerving. I honestly doubt, though, that someone's going to come forth at this point. And seeing how long ago this was, launching a full-scale investigation is next to impossible, especially with the date being so far in the past. For now, though, assuming this is true, or there is some merit to this post, this may be the best explanation to what happened to Scott Cleashulte. This is Barely Sociable. Have a good night. The internet is no strange place for oddities or shady business. With billions of people crossing paths on any individual platform each day, there is no shortage of questionable things that go on online. To investigate in today's video, we're going to be looking at one of those internet oddities that leads down a rabbit hole of one of Reddit's very first mysteries. While this mystery has been no stranger to speculation online, very few people have sought to actually create a cohesive narrative for the events surrounding this. What I seek to do today in this video is give you all the details, tell the story, and then give analysis on the events surrounding the Lake City Quiet Pills incident. While we will discuss the main theories of this, I want to remain a skeptic for the sake of uncovering the truth, as I think it's important here to focus on what we actually know rather than get carried away into Spooksville. So that being said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to tackle this incredibly detailed internet mystery. So sit back and enjoy as we dive straight into this. The trailhead for this rabbit hole revolves around the Reddit user named Religion of Peace, who joined Reddit back in 2007. He was most known on Reddit as a bit of an elder for his service in the military, but also infamously known as a moderator of the r/jailbait subreddit, which was a subreddit dedicating to posting photos of questionably underage girls. But more on that later. Religion of Peace post history is extensive and crude. There's so much to dig through here to set the stage for the events that unfold, that before we even talk about quiet pills, we need to understand exactly who this guy was to save us some confusion down the line. Also, for further reference, Religion of Peace is the same thing as ROP or Milo, the same person. That's all you need to know. Got it? Good. Let's go. Our first post I would like to highlight is from June 6, 2009. Here on a post commemorating the 65th anniversary of D-Day, what follows is a top comment from the user Religion of Peace, who chimes in explaining his experience on D-Day. I'm not going to read through this post because it's not very important, but all you need to know is that he claims to be 79 at the time of this post, putting him at age 14 during D-Day, which is seriously questionable. While many people enlisted in world wars below the age of 18, this is still something I highly doubt, as we have nothing but this guy's word to go off of. But what completely debunks this is the fact that if you manage to dig up all the way back into this guy's post history, you would find an Ask Reddit thread in which he says that his age was 70 the year prior. This completely debunks his age, which I haven't seen a single other person talk about on this subject matter. And I was about to actually end my video research once I saw this because I thought it was a hoax. But we're going to progress anyways, because what I found completely contradicts that. This is one really weird detail that I just had to throw in this video, but continuing on. Religion of Peace also claimed to have served in the military until 1987, claiming he didn't have enough money to retire and thus sought a job in a computer-related technical field that would be easier on his older body, and uses this to explain his frequent browsing of Reddit. However, I would like to point out that if he actually served 20 to 30 years, it takes about 20 years of service in the military, generally speaking, to gain retirement benefits. So here we have another thing that is just even more questionable. Admittedly, though, he does seem to have some experience in something, as his post history is so centered around the subject matter of being a soldier and revolves around violence that it's hard to look the other way. And despite all the evidence against his career, due to his many hours of commenting, just the sheer number of them, I do believe he has done some time somewhere in some form of service. His and his other use of military jargon does seem to match after researching around. In addition to that, I don't think a human would surround themselves with that subject matter forcefully for that matter of time. Moving on, Religion of Peace frequently posted about his obvious affinity for young girls, stating bluntly as an old man that he would, quote, admire the scenery but not pick the flowers. This is creepy to say the least. And as I mentioned earlier, he was a moderator of the r/jailbait subreddit, further solidifying himself into the pervert community. So we can say for certain at least one thing. A small detail that I haven't seen many point out when analyzing Religion of Peace post history is his technical skill with computers. He had a verifiable understanding of coding and would frequently post to the r/programming subreddit as well, something very uncharacteristic of an old man. The last thing we can glean from his post history is the frequent promotion of the website lakecityquietpills.com. That old guy's image hosting website, which is also the nickname of this site, which was a source of the Lake City Quiet Pills incident and was created as an image hosting website similar to Imgur or PhotoBucket, where users could upload photos and then link them across things like Reddit. This obviously was used for porn and had quite a bit of images on the site and quite a bit of users as well. So what do we actually know about the username Religion of Peace? Before concluding this section, let's summarize. He likely served some time in the military, despite our dates not being exact. We do not know his exact age. We know he was a moderator in the r/jailbait subreddit. We know he has experience as a programmer. And we also know he has a website called lakecityquietpills.com. And now that that's over with, we know who he is. It's time to finally get on to the story that involves this incident being set in motion. In July of 2009, a new user would make a post on the r/all subreddit by the name of 26, stating the following: "The end of religion of peace. He died today. I'm the person who provided religion of peace the space for that old guy's image host." It's time to finally get on to the story that involves this incident being set in motion. In July of 2009, a new user would make a post on the r/all subreddit by the name of 26, stating the following: "The end of religion of peace. He died today. I'm the person who provided religion of peace the space for that old guy's image host. Milo died today. He was 79 years old. He died at his desk looking at your site. Milo was a mean old fucker, mean and ornery. He hooked me up with my first gig when I got out of the army. I didn't like finding him like that. Milo don't have any living relatives and no real friends. And other than his landlady and a few people where he worked, he didn't talk to anyone about much of anything. Me, he just tolerated. As I said, he was mean. I think he used that as a shield to keep people away from him. Milo thought God was some kind of con game thought up by some lazy sons of bitches who didn't want to work every day. So he's going into the fire on Monday without a service, just like he wanted. I'm planning to dump his ashes in the woods in PA near where he was born. Can't put them right there because there's a mall now. I gave the girl next door his raggedy old cat and most of his books. His computers and Tronic shit he tagged for the disabled vets and BVA. All the rest of the stuff is for the Salvation Army. All those years and everything he owned fits in the trunk of my car. I don't know what else to say. I'll miss him. Miserable bastard." So here we have a third party stepping in, keeping in mind the name 26 for future reference, as he claimed to have a relationship to Milo, aka Religion of Peace, aka ROP. He even goes as far as to give out coordinates to where the ashes were spread of Religion of Peace, which is actually a Holiday Inn in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Seeing as we know the name of Religion of Peace, Milo, I'm going to be referring to him as such from now on. As a result of Milo gaining such a reputation over the years on Reddit, when this post about his death was on the r/all section, it managed to gain some traction, which led to about 650 upvotes, which isn't a lot by today's standard. However, in 2009, when Reddit didn't have nearly as much traffic, it was a slightly big event in some regard, whether intended or not. This naturally led users on Reddit to dig a bit deeper into what or who the guy was that died for the sake of curiosity. Some speculated whether or not this was a hoax meant to drive traffic to LakeCityQuietPills.com or the image hosting website. So people began to dig, and what they found would actually blow this mystery wide open. To validate the claims of this 26 character, Redditors sought to make a connection, and Redditors managed to dig up an old account from a website called FARC and found a user by the name of Angel26. Angel26 bio read the following: "Dispensing Lake City Quiet Pills to lousy bastards in need of a permanent rest since 1968. And this account had dated all the way back to 2001. Angel26's comment history was similar to that of Milo's or Religion of Peace's, and dealt with detailing their favorite guns, ammunitions, and they appeared to have a history of military service as well. Notably, though, Angel26 also had an email address, angel26@lakecityquietpills.com, which was registered under his FARC account. If that wasn't enough, users also compared the writing styles of the post to Angel26, and it was pretty darn close. Angel misspelled some of the same words and used very similar incorrect apostrophes in his writing, which would be an insane amount of work to fake for an account going all the way back to 2001. So mystery hunters had their match, but what now? Well, people kept digging and digging, trying to uncover the meaning behind the Lake City Quiet Pills website name. Clearly, Angel had some connection, but what was the reason for naming the website, especially since it was used to host adult content? So why use the name LakeCityQuietPills.com? It doesn't exactly scream, "Hey, we have porn over here." In search of some kind of meaning, Redditors were led to the website and decided to dig a bit deeper. And upon looking at the source code of the website, they discovered a message board hidden in plain sight. These messages were dated and showed the true nature of what had been going on behind the scenes. And in the months to come, they would piece together a story unfolding silently in this corner of the internet. The posts on this hidden message board were predominantly job postings, but not job postings for your typical paradoxical entry-level job that requires 2 years experience. No, they appeared to be for some form of military contracting, bodyguards, or mercenary work. Funny enough, the day that Reddit user 26 posted the news of Religion of Peace dying, or Milo, an anonymous user on the message board posted the following on July 17th, 2009, hidden within the contents of LakeCityQuietPills.com. I'm sorry to tell you that old Milo died yesterday. He went quiet and calm, not like we all figured. I gave that fat mangy cat to the girl next door. No services or nothing. You know Milo. I'm taking his ashes to back where his farm was. Close to it anyways. There's a mall where his place was. So hoist a few for the old man. Remember what he said. Keep with the man who's got your back. Just calling back to what I said about the age not matching up of religion of peace. Here we had confirmation from a third party that was posted to seemingly no one at the time that this guy had died. So we have some form of confirmation here that appears to surpass this guy lying about his age or experience in the army. As noted earlier in the Reddit post, Angel26 was the one who provided hosting for the website. So this is clearly him posting. Alongside this post, there was also quite a few job postings that read the following. A number of these posts obviously featured a bunch of different acronyms. The most highly controversial acronym of them all was W/W, whether it meant wet work or want/warrants. Essentially, this would mean that if it was wet work, this had to involve murder, or want/warrants, meaning that they couldn't have a wanted arrest or anything out for them in a certain country. At the time of this happening, very few people actually realized the messages were on the website, and it took a while for this mystery to kind of unfold. It didn't really gain a lot of initial attention. However, on September 30th, 2009, more than 2 months later after Milo died, Angel26 presumably posted, for those that have asked, I picked Milo's iron key the same day. All is well. If you're unfamiliar with what an iron key is, it's essentially an encrypted flash drive. To brick a device, you're essentially making all the data on the device lost, rendering the device unusable and clean. This likely hints at the fact that this group of individuals on this message board was not involved in your typical military contracting or bodyguarding. This hints at some shady business. On November 14th, 2009, Angel26, or user26, posted again on the website. Milo's will cleared probate. Surprise, Milo was loaded. Email Shade if we sent you out in 2005 to 2009. Shade will have checks cut for you. Amount is by how many times, not by pay total. Small share is 3 to 4K. This part is interesting. Milo had a will for a group of individuals, or perhaps they're just the only ones to be left to, that he had alive. And in this message stating that anyone had been sent out in 2005 to 2009 would mean that these jobs have been going on for quite a bit of time. And the fact that they're getting $3,000 to $4,000 is a decent amount of money that would match up with military contracting work. Also in this message, we see a new individual referenced, Shade, who apparently has been handling payouts. Moving forward to January 2010, Angel26 returned, this time with an announcement. Happy New Year, everyone. We're having a birthday party for the old man on the 19th. Party starts at 1500. At the usual, send your RSVP to Shade. FYI, we're booking a room for 3 days for anyone coming out of the area and overnight for locals. Come hoist one for Dutch Milo. While on the surface, it seems nice that these group of individuals would throw a party for their lost colleague, it is rumored that it was not a literal party per se, and rather something else due to the message that was sent out the following day before the party. We got 38 rooms in the Marriott on 46. Shade has the key cards for locals. Pick up at the party. Give your travel name to the desk, and that's it. No ID needed. We're covering the bill. Keep the room service under 500, okay? The phones there are not secure. Bus from hotel leaves at 13:30. Car service vouchers for return trip. When you're ready to crash, don't DUI. If they're traveling for leisure, why would they worry about the phone lines? Why would they need a travel name? And why would a group of adults be reminded to not drive under the influence? All of this seemed to hint at something else going on here. Well, coincidentally, on January 19th at 3 p.m. local time, a very intricate assassination would take place in Dubai at the exact same time listed on the party invitation. On January 19th, 2010, Mahmoud al-Mabou, which, pardon me if I said that wrong, who was a Hamas leader involved in the organization and logistics of weapons for Hamas, was traveling alone under a fake name and with no security guards. Earlier that day, his trip had been preceded by a small network of men and women, numbering around 24 in total. These individuals had arrived in Dubai using fake names and passports of their own and began coordinating their efforts to track down al-Mabou. I will leave the security footage of this coordinated assassination to see the full extent of what went on here, but there's about 27 minutes of security footage, so to save time, I'll ultimately leave that up to you. The gist of what happened is as follows. A group of assassins tracked the Hamas leader to his room, waited for him to leave to go shopping, snuck into his room and gained access somehow, and waited for the guy to come back. This assassination were given credit cards from Storm Lake in Iowa, which is a town over to Lake City, Iowa. And if you're wondering how Lake City, Iowa plays into this other than Lake City quiet pills, if you remember Angel 26 signature on FARC, it was essentially dispensing Lake City quiet pills to lousy bastards in need of permanent rest since 1968. And if you actually do a Google search for Lake City, Iowa quiet pills, what most people have agreed upon is the fact that Lake City quiet pills is based off the ammunition plant based in Lake City, which is one of the U.S.'s largest manufacturers for bullets. So quiet pills are bullets. That's how the connection here is made. The fact that that town is won over in less than an hour away would point that some of the people who are involved with this might be local to that area. A couple weeks after the event happened, what was posted onto the Lake City Quiet Pills website was the following. Here's the final for the party. Hotel rooms, 48,341. Limo, 6,080. Bus, 569. Bar bill, 18,890. Food, 8,030. Dancers, 8,300. Miscellaneous tips, $850. Miscellaneous expenses, $28.40. Medical supplies, $180. Fat Tommy and Stu are okay too. Total $94,080. You did all Dutch Milo proud. Thanks. 94,000 sounds like quite a bit for a party, but there's no way to say for certain what actually all this itemization is about. After a few weeks later, more and more people began to link up the world events, and this started to gain even more attention. So what used to be an easy read text documenting all the job postings on this website had become encrypted. Redditors trying to see what was behind this encryption and what was on the website thereafter led them to see it get encrypted again. And then right after that, the website was taken down completely. Today, the only thing we have left is the Wayback Machine or the archives of the site left over. Moving on to the analysis of this entire situation, as it's very hard to bring this all together. There's so many little details, and this is one of those very bizarre internet oddities. I will say, after studying up on this incident, I don't see enough evidence at all to conclusively say that these guys were linked to any assassinations. The only evidence that it links to assassination of the credit cards, which are from Storm Lake, like I said, which still isn't Lake City. It's a town over, even though it's 50 minutes away, which is hardly enough to stand on to link the two. The only real connection comes from the exact timing. Other than that, I would just say it's a coincidence. Likely, what I think this was a group of military contract workers. Angel 26 even says in the Reddit post that Milo got him a job after he got out of the military. So via way of Occam's razor, this would make the most sense. As to what these guys were involved in is next to impossible to say. Many people believe this to be a hoax as well, but I would disagree. The FARC account dated all the way back to 2001 that went to Angel 26. And on top of that, why would a site encrypt its message board right after being discovered, then completely nuke the site? All of that does not add up to this being a hoax. And the weirdest thing that no one has explored, other than one little Reddit thread that I found on the Lake City Quiet Pills website that barely gained any attention, is what I want to leave you with at the end of this video. Okay, so this is pretty ominous. If you essentially dispensing Lake City Quiet Pills to lousy bastards in need of permanent rest. 94,000 sounds like quite a bit for a party, but there's very bizarre internet oddities. I will say, after studying up on this incident, encrypted again, and then right after that, the website was taken down completely. Today, the only thing we have left is the Wayback Machine or the archives of the site left over. Moving on to the analysis of this entire situation, as it's very hard to bring this all together. There's so many little details, and this is one of those very bizarre internet oddities. I will say, after studying up on this incident, I don't see enough evidence at all to conclusively say that these guys were linked to any assassinations. The only evidence that it links to assassination of the credit cards, which are from Storm Lake, like I said, which still isn't Lake City. It's a town over, even though it's 50 minutes away, which is hardly enough to stand on to link the two. The only real connection comes from the exact timing. Other than that, I would just say it's a coincidence. Likely, what I think this was a group of military contract workers. Angel26 even says in the Reddit post that Milo got him a job after he got out of the military. So via way of Occam's razor, this would make the most sense. As to what these guys were involved in is next to impossible to say. Many people believe this to be a hoax as well, but I would disagree. The FARC account dated all the way back to 2001 that went to Angel26. And on top of that, why would a site encrypt its message board right after being discovered, then completely nuke the site? All of that does not add up to this being a hoax. And the weirdest thing that no one has explored, other than one little Reddit thread that I found on the Lake City Quiet Pills website that barely gained any attention, is what I want to leave you with at the end of this video. Okay, so this is pretty ominous. If you actually look up Religion of Peace's Reddit username on a website called Snoop Snoo, which allows you to gain more information about Redditors, it shows that his last post was actually made in 2019. Okay, so if I look at his post history, he has no posts at all, which is very bizarre because this guy's dead. Okay, so this leaves us with two possibilities. Someone either made a post under a private subreddit, which would be the reason for the post not being shown in his profile, or Snoop Snoo is glitching out. This also happens with user 26 as well, meaning he's posted in 2019 as well. So these guys might still be around, which is weird. Either way, this is an incredibly interesting rabbit hole, incredibly interesting mystery, and the speculation.
No.
$5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window. I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stoners.
Hello and welcome to another episode.
Apparently the
of
house is
Cultures of
underwater
Beautiful.
now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a clay fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick, who we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tutu Hamong, but Howard calls him Spot. Spot tries to warn Howard about King Abdul, the villain from the previous movie, forming an alliance with somebody worse. He also tells him not to let anybody have the book, especially his father. Then Howard wakes up and his mom tells him it's time to go to school, but she says it in the most sinister way possible.
And don't keep mother waiting.
We then cut. His name is Tutu Hamong. I could do this review without any more interruption. Oh. Darn it. Pay a handful of big-name actors the SAG minimum to record their lines from their bedrooms, just so you can say they're in it, and aim it at an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated it is. Oh, hold on.
Hey, Cthulhu. Hey, Possum. You need to borrow some more money? Actually, I was just passing by and wondering if you're coming to my clarinet recital tonight. Oh, I can't. I have to talk about this stupid movie. What movie? Howard. Can I borrow $5 for gas? I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this view without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes and complains, borrow $5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from it. Borrow $5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stoners. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a clay fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick, who we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tutu Hamong, but Howard calls him Spot. Spot tries to warn Howard about King Abdul, the villain from the previous. The camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some. It's in the public domain. It's really one of the most cynical things I've ever seen. You take the writings of a famous dead author and slap together a cheap movie loosely based on it, pay a handful of big-name actors the SAG minimum to record their lines from their bedrooms just so you can say they're in it, and aim it at an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated it is. Oh, hold on. There's the SAG minimum to record their lines from their bedrooms just so you can say they're in it, and aim it at an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated it is. Oh, hold on. Oh, hey, Cthulhu. Hey, Possum. You need to borrow some more money? Actually, I was just passing by and wondering if you're coming to my clarinet recital tonight. Oh, I can't. I have to talk about this stupid movie. What movie? Howard Lovecraft in the Undersea Kingdom. Oh, I hate that movie. It makes me look like a loser. Yeah, well, I have to get back to work. Okay, well, I guess I'll let you go. Oh, actually, can I borrow $5 for gas? I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stoners. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a clay fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick, who we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tooth Fish. I ain't talking. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. The movie starts with Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dream. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window. I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stone. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a clay fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick, who we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tutu Hamon, but Howard calls him Spot. Spot tries to warn Howard about King Abdul, the villain from the previous movie, forming an alliance with somebody worse. He also tells him not to let anybody have the book, especially his father. Then Howard wakes up and his mom tells him it's time to go to school, but she says it in the most sinister way possible.
And don't keep mother waiting.
We then cut. His name is Tutu Hamon. I could do this review without any more interruption. Stop it. Pay a handful of big-name actors the SAG minimum to record their lines from their bedrooms, just so you can say they're in it, and aim it at an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated it is. Oh, hold on. Oh, hey Cthulhu. Hey Possum. You need to borrow some more money? Actually, I was just passing by and wondering if you're coming to my clarinet recital tonight. Oh, I can't. I have to talk about this stupid movie. What movie? Howard, can I borrow $5 for gas? I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this view without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up to complain about $5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from it. $5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stoners. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a clay fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick, who we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tutu Hamon, but Howard calls him Spot. Spot tries to warn Howard about King Abdul, the villain from the previous. The camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like it's in the public domain. It's really one of the most cynical things I've ever seen. You take the writings of a famous dead author and slap together a cheap movie loosely based on it. Pay a handful of big-name actors the SAG minimum to record their lines from their bedrooms, just so you can say they're in it. And aim it at an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated. It is. Oh, hold on. Cthulhu. Hey, Possum. Need to borrow some more money? Actually, I was just passing by and wondering if you're coming to my clarinet recital tonight. Oh, I can't. I have to talk about this stupid movie. What movie? Howard Lovecraft in the Undersea Kingdom. Oh, I hate that movie. It makes me look like a loser. Yeah, well, I have to get back to work. Okay, well, I guess I'll let you go. Actually, you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for snows. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard and learns to do what looks like a clay fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Fish. I ain't talking. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. The movie starts with Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window. I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby book. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stone. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a clay fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tutu Haman, but Howard calls him Spot. Spot tries to warn Howard about King Abdul, the villain from the previous movie, forming an alliance with somebody worse. He also tells him not to let anybody have the book, especially his father. Then Howard wakes up and his mom tells him it's time to go to school, but she says it in the most sinister way possible. I don't keep mother. His name is Tutu Haman. I could do this review without any more interruption. Pay a handful of big-name actors the SAG minimum to record their lines from their bedrooms, just so you can say they're in it, and aim it at an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated it is. Hold on. Hey Cthulhu. Hey Possum. Need to borrow some more money? Actually, I was just passing by and wondering if you're coming to my clarinet recital tonight. I have to talk about this stupid movie. What movie? Howard, can I borrow $5 for gas? I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this video without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up to complain $5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from it. $5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby brook. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stoners. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a play fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tutu Haman, but Howard calls him Spot. Spot tries to warn Howard about King Abdul, controlling from the preview. The camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like it's in the public domain. It's really one of the most cynical things I've ever seen. You take the ratings of a famous dead author and slap together a cheap movie loosely based on it. Pay a handful of big-name actors the SAG minimum to record their lines from the bedrooms, just so you can say they're in it. And an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated.
So guys, how are you? Saudi Arabia.
Hold on. Hey, Cthulhu. Hey, Possum. Need to borrow some more money? Actually, I was just passing by and wondering if you're coming to my clear recital tonight. I have to talk about this stupid movie. What movie? Howard Lovecraft in the Undersea Kingdom. Oh, I hate that movie. It makes me look like a loser. Okay, well, I guess I'll let you go. Actually, you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby brook. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stoners. Apparently the house is underwater now. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a play fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Fish. I ain't talking. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. The movie starts with Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams. We see a Tim Burton reject.
So the BBC have been pumping out an awful.
It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby brook. Then he gets up to look out the window. I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains about his weird dreams, and then he hears a voice coming from a nearby brook. Then he gets up to look out the window and sees fish. I ain't talking about the kind that makes crappy music for stoners. So then the house is underwater. Then a tentacle reaches in and grabs Howard, and we're introduced to what looks like a play fighter character. But this is Howard's sidekick we met in the previous movie. He looks like Cthulhu, but he isn't. His name is Tutu Haman, but Howard calls him Spot. Spot tries to warn Howard about King Abdul, the villain from the previous movie, forming an alliance with somebody worse. He also tells him not to let anyone out the book, especially his father. Then Howard wakes up and his mom tells him it's time to go to school, but she says it in the most sinister way possible. His name is Tutu Haman. I could do this review without any more interruption. Pay a handful of big-name actors the SAG minimum to record their lines from the bedrooms, just so you can say they're in it. And an audience too young to even notice how poorly animated it is. son. You need to borrow some more money? Actually, I was just passing by and wondering if you're coming to my clarinet recital tonight. I have to talk about this stupid movie. Black movie. Can I borrow $5 for gas? I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this video without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't he cute? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard Wade took a complaint for $5 for gas. I'm sure I won't hear from him again for the rest of the video. And maybe I could do this review without any more interruptions. The movie starts with the camera zooming in on a house. We see a Tim Burton reject sleeping in his clothes like some kind of weirdo. It turns out this is our protagonist, Howard Lovecraft. Isn't it? Almost makes you forget he grows up to become a screaming racist. Howard wakes up and complains by his weird dream.
Topic 78. Because you demanded it. A woman convicted of sorcery is executed in Saudi Arabia. The execution happened Monday, according to the Saudi Interior Ministry. London's Al Hayat Daily quoted Chief of the Religious Police Abdullah Al-Mohsen, who arrested the woman. They said she tricked individuals and made them believe she could treat sickness for $800 a session. Apparently, the woman in her 60s was arrested in 2009 and then later convicted in a Saudi court. The beheading was execution number 73 for Saudi Arabia this year. Saudi Arabia voted against a UN General Assembly resolution this last December, calling for a freeze on executions according to the rights group. Murder, rape, robbery, drug trafficking, and apostasy are all punishable by death under Saudi Arabia's law.
One woman and 3 others have been executed in Saudi Arabia for drug trafficking, bringing the number of Nigerians executed in the kingdom in the last 3 years to 8. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Diaspora Matters, Mrs. Abaite Biriwa, who spoke, added that no fewer than 20 Nigerians have been sentenced to death in Saudi Arabia over drug-related offenses. Briefing State House correspondents at the presidential villa, Abuja, she described as disgraceful and embarrassing the conduct of 5 Nigerians who were caught trading bureaus to change in United Arab Emirates, UAE. She advised travelers, especially those boarding Egypt and Ethiopian airlines, to always be watchful with their luggage, noting that some airline operators in some cases conspire with drug barons to insert drugs in their bags without the travelers' knowledge. She said with the recent killing of the woman, the number of Nigerians executed for drug-related offenses in Saudi Arabia in the last 3 years had risen to 8, adding that 12 persons have already been sentenced for various jail terms in that country. She said it had been established that there were cases of airlines working hand-in-hand with drug syndicates to put those drugs in the bags of unsuspecting pilgrims. According to her, we have had cases where truly these people executed for drug offenses didn't commit the offense.
Welcome to episode 3 of All Cultures Are Beautiful. This time we head to the exotic African nation of Mozambique, known for its tropical beaches, its sweeping cities, and vibrant native culture that can only be filmed in 480p by a toaster. While the people of Mozambique are friendly, warm and welcoming, one must remember not to be shocked at the cultural practice of whiteface, which, despite being offensive, must be understood in the progressive context of fuck you whitey. Mozambique's strong commitment to diversity can be seen in the native treatment of albinos, that is, people suffering from a condition in which their skin lacks pigmentation. Mozambique is leading the way in procuring a final solution for the melanin deficient, with sufferers of albinism being declared by the UN to be at the brink of total extinction. This is due to the native witch doctors proclaiming that the limbs, organs, and genitals of albinos can be harvested to bring wealth and good luck, if the spirits of the ancestors are to be believed. Indigenous scientists have discovered that albinos are created either through the infidelity of the mother with a European, or through possession of the albino by the ghost of a European colonist. But the discoveries don't end there. In June of 2017, it came to light that in central Mozambique, bald men are literally being headhunted because of the cultural belief that the head of a bald man contains gold. Further investigation into this new branch of science reveals that Mozambique's top social scientists might be misleading innocent natives for their own gain, in an attempt to gather more body parts as a small business venture by enterprising witch doctors for international business deals. If we've learned one thing from the spiritual and enriching culture of Mozambique, it's that it's okay to kill people if you can make money from their death. Just imagine how much the huge domed skull of a bald white man could be worth. If you're a well-traveled European citizen of the world, don't forget to cover up. Have you ever noticed that all cultures are beautiful and equal in their own way? For example, let's take a look at India, particularly a village in the south of India, where a 10-year-old girl was sacrificed in a black magic ritual. Now, I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. Aisha Muhammad Nurullah, the 10-year-old whose body was found on the outskirts of a village in southern India, appears to have been sacrificed in a beautiful black magic ritual to cure a paralyzed man. See, it's altruistic. Naseem Taj suggested that Wasil's brother Muhammad Rafiq could be cured of a paralytic stroke if a girl was sacrificed. And who are you to tell them that they're wrong? She had suggested that Rafiq had been gripped by evil spirits and paralyzed, and to be cured of this, he had to sacrifice a minor girl within 40 days. Wasil began looking for a girl and thought of his neighbor and cousin Muhammad Nurullah's daughter Aisha. He took a picture of her and then sent it to a sorceress, who approved Wasil's choice. This wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I mean, he had to think this through. He didn't want to choose the wrong girl. And on March the 1st, Wasil kidnapped the girl from her home in Magdi, gagged her, and then slit her throat, performing an occult ritual. And then later on, the girl's body was packed in a sack and dumped behind a mosque. They lured her out while her mother was in the bath. The trio called her out and kidnapped her. They took her to a property owned by Wasil in an isolated location, and they locked her inside a room for a day. Then the next day, they took an auto rickshaw from Magdi to Bengaluru. On their way, they picked up the material required for performing the black magic, as they would have traditionally done. They brought Aisha out of the room and began performing the rituals, both in the day and the night. And all through, the paralyzed brother of the accused was present at the location. After some rituals, they strangled Aisha with the ribbon she had used to tie her hair. On March the 3rd, on Nasima's instructions, they packed her body into a gunny bag and threw it at the right side of a mosque nearby. Now, you and I, dear progressive viewer, know how enriching that is. We know how diversity is our strength. But if you look at the comment sections on this article, you'll realize that there are some real Islamophobes reading the Times of India. Law Shastra says, horrendous crime. The local people are to blame, as such crimes can't be committed unless with the knowledge of local people. Law Shastra, that's really bigoted. Just because there were like 5 people involved with this beautiful ceremony doesn't mean you can indict them all as if they all had something to do with it. This was just something that happens in this culture. But the worst one was from ProConnect, who, and I've never read anything this awful. Muslim do this. That's so racist. You don't know that it was a Muslim. Just because the guy's name was Muhammad, you do not know you can't be sure. He might have been an atheist. You know that there are so many secular, progressive atheists in India and in all of the Muslim world, in fact. This is just an awful comment, and this user should be tracked down, doxxed, and banned for life from using the internet. That's what. I mean, I just cannot even. How dare you offend this beautiful and vibrant culture? Welcome to episode 2 of All Cultures Are Beautiful, and we're once again going back to India with presenter and religious scholar Reza Aslan, as he goes to visit a Hindu cannibal sect and experience their vibrant and diverse culture. So Reza Aslan was with a group from the Agori sect when he was invited to eat cooked brain tissue during a ritual. Aslan met the Agori in the holy Hindu city of Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh, where they smeared the ashes from cremated human bodies on his face. He then drank an alcoholic drink from a human skull before eating what he was told was human brain. And that's just fantastic, because it shows that Reza Aslan's commitment to diversity is more important than his Muslim faith. At one point, he fell out with the Agori guru, who shouted, "I will cut your head off if you keep talking so much," which just goes to show that the Agori sect is also a religion of peace, so him and Reza must have had plenty of common ground. Then the guru began to eat his own feces and throw the remainder at Aslan himself. What a beautiful culture that should be respected as the equal of every other culture on earth. And don't worry, I wouldn't let you go without answering that one burning question. Just what does a human brain taste like? Well, the answer's charcoal, because apparently this guy wasn't a great cook. Absolutely wonderful. And I for one, really appreciate Reza debasing himself in this way, to really highlight the progressive and diverse facets of this fascinating religion, this fascinating culture, and these truly modern people. Just imagine how much the huge dome skull of the North might have. If you're a well-traveled European citizen of the world, don't forget to Hello and welcome to episode 6 of All Cultures Are Beautiful. This time we're taking a trip to the landlocked African nation of Malawi. Malawi is a beautiful country with fantastic scenery, exotic animals, and a friendly, helpful population. But unfortunately for the Malawians, they have been persistently under attack by vampires. In September 2017, vampires were suspected to have invaded the southern border town of Mulanje. After 15 years of peace, once again there are rumors of vampires who are collecting human blood in some districts of the country for political reasons. And naturally, locals are unable to sleep for fear of having their blood sucked during the night. So there was only one thing to do: find out just who is colluding with the vampires and give them some Malawian justice. Some tourists were killed by residents suspected to be colluding with vampires to collect human blood. A police spokesman said, "We are reminding people that rumors about bloodsuckers have been there since time immemorial, but no case has ever been proven." And good on the local villagers who insist that the police are just hiding the truth, as many people in the district are not sleeping, which is presumably not connected to all the drumming and shouting that they do during the night to frighten the vampires away. Because of the vampire attacks on Malawian villages, the US Embassy in Malawi issued a security message for US citizens. Please review your personal security plans. Remain aware of your surroundings, including local events, and monitor local news stations for updates. Maintain a high level of vigilance and take appropriate steps to enhance your personal security. Despite the US warning about vampire bloodsuckers invading the country, the Malawian police chief remained in denial and said that people should reject rumors of bloodsuckers, saying, currently nobody has died for being sucked of blood here in Malanje. Some people have just created the story to breed fear among communities. We would like to assure residents of Malanje that they are protected and that police investigations are underway to find the root cause of such and to get to the bottom of the matter. The district commissioner for Malanje said, the rumors have brought a devastating effect on people since residences have always been anxious about strangers in some areas, and that they were sleeping outside of their homes for fear of having their blood sucked. A spokesperson for the United Nations said, well, that's what they would say, isn't it? And referred to a Human Rights Watch investigation that demonstrated that Malawi had been overrun by a vampire elite, and short of sending garlic and crosses, nothing further could be done. The next day, in the neighboring district of Falombe, 2 ambulances that were thought to have been carrying the bloodsuckers were smashed up by concerned citizens. One of the ambulances belonged to Malanje and was coming from the capital to drop off a suspected vampire. Despite the vigilance and extrajudicial killings conducted by the local villagers, no vampires have yet been discovered. An investigation by Malawi News discovered that the locals had failed to catch the vampires because the vampires were using magical powers, magical shape-shifting powers, which turned them into cats or dogs before disappearing. It was also revealed that these weren't just any old-world vampires that used their teeth to suck people's blood. These were actually super-advanced Wakandan vampires that used some kind of technology which involved the initial spraying of chemical or some electric powers to weaken the target before sucking the blood. And the blood sucking is alleged to be done using some remotely controlled gadgets. The locals describe the blood-sucking process as being complicated, saying one can be sucked from a distance through the window or roof. 3 strangers were burnt to death after the locals found them with a bag containing slings, benzene, gloves, and other sharp metals, which are believed to be part of the sucking equipment. A clerk said, the bloodsuckers are real. They've been to my house. They sprayed their weakening chemical, but we noticed it earlier and managed to escape. My eyes were hurting and I ran out of breath. It's alleged that the vampires are from Mozambique, and they can't be arrested because they're using strong magical charms. Many villagers came forward to give their accounts of having their blood sucked by the fully automated luxury space vampires. One single mother said, I felt a needle getting into my forehead's flesh. The rest of my body was numb. I struggled to touch my forehead. I felt a hot, sharp injection like metal. I alerted my brother, who was also in the same room. The thing was quickly removed. Everything happened so fast. Another single mother said that an attacker had entered her home and sucked her blood in the Thiolo district. This is not hearsay, she told a fascinated crowd in her village in the country south. I know my blood was sucked. I saw light on the corner of my roof. I failed to stand up from my bed and I felt something piercing my left arm. Given the apparently medical nature of the vampire attacks, it's no wonder that doctors have been identified as the most likely people in Malawi to be vampires. Groups of concerned citizens have enacted revenge on the vampire doctors, who are easily identified because they are carrying stethoscopes with which to suck blood. Their thralls, otherwise known as medics, have also been robbed and had their vehicles smashed, and ambulances have been attacked as their victims were taken to the hospital. The Society of Medical Vampires in Malawi said a case of mass hysteria was sweeping the south of their country that has led thousands of people to believe that there are doctors in their midst. They claim that no health worker can suck blood with a stethoscope, with another vampire adding that there is no evidence that they are really vampires, despite the fact that they all carry stethoscopes. By the 3rd of October 2017, it had all become too much for the citizens of Malawi. Groups of concerned citizens had killed 6 people suspected of trying to obtain and drink human blood as part of magic rituals since mid-September. A police spokesman and notorious vampire denialist said, "There is no evidence about the bloodsuckers. We blame local communities for taking the law into their own hands," adding that local people targeted victims because they were believed to be seeking blood for spiritual rituals. There is no evidence of bloodsucking, and nobody has come to the police to complain. The Malawian government was forced to intervene and claimed that there were no vampires in Malanje. It was just a ploy. A ploy meant to tarnish the image of the Democratic Progressive Party by those who do not wish the government well. The prevailing vampire paranoia situation in Malanje and the surrounding areas has the potential to derail our efforts in promoting our country as a tourist destination, but also preferred destination for foreign and direct investment. While this may be true, it fails to explain how the vampire doctors are sucking people's blood with their stethoscopes. Because after all, if there were no vampires in Malawi, why would the UN pull their staff from the country? As the UN Department on Safety and Security state, these districts have been severely affected by the ongoing stories of bloodsucking and possible existence of vampires. And if the Malawi government wasn't controlled by vampires, why would they impose a curfew because the vampires are being killed? The curfew restricted movement to 10 hours per day, from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. local time, exactly the daylight hours in which vampires cannot operate, leaving the vampires free to operate at night with impunity. The UN even identified the source of the vampires, saying that they originated from Mozambique and spread across the border to Malawi through the districts of Malanje and Falombe. Finally, the president of Malawi said that he was going to crack down on the international vampire conspiracy and the witchcraft that they are performing. President Peter Mutharika warned suspected vampires to stop terrorizing people and told village chiefs to stamp down on witchcraft. He said, "If people are using witchcraft to suck people's blood, I will deal with them, and I asked them to stop doing that with immediate effect." After the president confirmed that there was indeed an epidemic of vampires plaguing Malawi, groups of concerned citizens killed 2 more people, one of which was an epileptic man who was torched. This led to Malawi becoming a veritable police state, as the police arrested 140 members of so-called lynch mobs who were delivering justice to the vampires, with the National Police spokesperson telling the BBC that patrols had been stepped up in the areas affected. Western media outlets naturally placed the blame for all of this on white people. As Vice magazine states, in colonial Zambia in the 1930s, Africans claimed their blood was taken and their bodies left for dead to make cough drops for Europeans. Can you think of a better description for the exploitation of luxuries for white people? In post-colonial East and Central Africa, there were many stories that blood was sold to this or that country in exchange for weapons. There were some who denied that there were any vampires at all in Malawi, claiming that this hysteria was part of a symbolic representation of life. In a paper titled Deconstructing Mediocrity, Vampires, Victims and National Hysteria, John Mwanda suggests that to understand the roots of these superstitions, we must look beyond the beliefs themselves to the underlying structural conditions in the areas which they emerge. The roots of the current vampire hysteria lie also in the current state of law and order, moral order, and socio-economic conditions in Malawi, and not just, however, ingrained or strong in mere belief of witchcraft. Another vampire denialist at the University of Malawi said the same thing. It's almost a symbolic representation of the life, their blood, their hope being drawn out of them, being sucked out of them. And nowhere was this better exemplified when a group of concerned citizens attacked BBC journalists in Malawi because it was discovered that they were also a part of the international vampire conspiracy. The vampires said, "We found that some people were terrified because we were in 2 vehicles and they started mobilizing themselves. When they came to us, they started confronting us saying that they thought we might be bloodsuckers. In the first place, the discussions with locals were going on very well, but the more people were coming, the situation was becoming worse. They said that a crowd armed with stones and other sharp objects assaulted the crew, confiscated some of their equipment, and damaged one of their 2 vehicles. Despite the understandable and ongoing concerns with vampire activity in Malawi, it seems like the residents have things fully under control. So when you think about booking your next holiday to a tropical foreign land, consider Malawi. The vampire problem isn't as bad as it seems. Because they are carrying stethoscopes. Marriage is always cause for a celebration, so it should come as no surprise that when a video of a local Pakistani man who married 2 women in one day went viral, he was hailed as a hero by the public, and the country's media was gripped with polygamy fever. Azar Hydri, 23, was hailed as a hero for daring to marry 2 of his first cousins, so they would not have to go through the guilt of not finding an appropriate match. His family were thrilled for the happy triple, because the young man had taken on the burden of supporting and caring for his cousins. At first, Mr. Hydri refused to marry his cousin, Humayra Qasim, despite having an existing prearranged marriage with her since childhood, because of his love for a different cousin, Rumana Aslan, and it was tearing their family apart. I gave this offer that I will marry both of them. Both girls agreed. That was Mr. Hydri's brilliant solution that satisfied both his family and Islamic law. Pakistan's progressive interpretation of Islam holds no prohibition on cousin marriage and permits a man to have up to 4 wives. And of course, the lucky brides were both thrilled with the arrangement. I am happy we both love the same man, Miss Aslan told the Associated Press. And you can just see it on their faces. Just the absolute picture of happiness. Congratulations to the newlyweds. This beautiful and progressive cultural practice is often attacked by racists in Western white supremacist press outlets such as the BBC and the Telegraph, where they claim that more than half of Pakistanis are married to a cousin and that this carries significant risks, and that science has proven that it increases the risk of birth defects up to tenfold, which is why the British Pakistani community sees a massive increase in the number of children born with genetic disabilities relative to population size. This is, of course, total nonsense. Everyone knows the doctors are wrong, and the decision is in the hands of God, as it should be. After all, the Prophet Muhammad himself, peace be upon him, married his cousin Zainab bint Jahsh, the daughter of his aunt. And if the perfect man did it, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The UN even identified the source of the vampire, saying they originated from Mozambique and spread across the border to Malawi through the districts of Malanje and Colombo. Finally, the president of Malawi said that he was going to crack. Hello and welcome to another episode of All Cultures Are Beautiful. This time we'll be dealing with a crisis in the landlocked West African nation of Burkina Faso. Because Burkina Faso has a real problem. People keep stealing penises using magic. And understandably, the local men are not happy about it. In fact, they've begun to take the law into their own hands and lynch any man accused of stealing another man's penis. An example of this happened in 2014, when a man was killed by a mob in Koudougou, a town in central Burkina Faso, after being accused of making